just never know the Jesus you're going to come across in the Gospels. But think about it, right? I mean, the parable is that the man owed a ton of money and got forgiven by the king just to turn around and then put somebody in jail until he paid it in full. How thankful really was he for his forgiveness? Now, whether or not God tortures you until you pay your debt in full, which is kind of the implication at the end of that text, Jesus' point is stark. How can you, in your right conscience, in your right mind, ask for forgiveness when you are unwilling to give it? It's a tough question, but one we do need to reflect on. I can't help but see this passage in terms of Sesame Street, in terms of a Sesame Street sketch. And I guess now it's starting to become clear why I have the count on the front cover, right? I can't help but see this in terms of a Sesame Street sketch. Peter, as one of the young boys on Sesame Street, comes up to Jesus and says, "Hey, JC, I've been having this guy down the street, really bullying me." And Jesus just stares on, kind of blankly, not really sure what Peter's getting at. So Peter continues, "This guy is, really, really bothering me. So I want to, ask you a question." Jesus nods, and so Peter continues. "I think, really, really trying to forgive him. I mean, JC, the guy just won't really, he won't quit, So I guess my question is, how many times do I have to forgive someone before it's reached the point of no return?" At this point, the scene changes to the dark Transylvanian countryside, with a large, grim, and dark castle looming over the land on the mountaintop, lightning flashing around, bats flying in the sky. The camera zooms in toward the castle, and the outside shot fades as it reveals the inside of the castle. And inside, you see the count. 5 times forgiven. 6 times forgiven. 7 times forgiven. You won't be forgiven anymore. And the thunder crashes, right? Can we picture this? Okay. Then the screen fades back to Jesus shaking his head at Peter. In reality, we often look at these disciples as if they are silly characters on a children's show or on a sitcom, wondering why Jesus ever picked these 12 to be his disciples. I mean, if he were the Son of God, if he were omniscient, of course the Bible never said he was omniscient, at least in his earthly form, but if he knew everything, if he were the Son of God, if he could cause the dead to rise and he could walk on water, surely he would have known how dense these disciples really were, right? I mean, Jesus, what were you thinking? But that is convenient for us, being that we have the fortune of knowing who Jesus is and the point he is trying to make in any given gospel, because the author starts off identifying who Jesus is and giving us the inside clues as to what Jesus meant. That makes us even more silly, doesn't it? Doesn't that make us even more silly? Because we have the inside clue as to what Jesus meant. We know Jesus' answer to the disciples, don't we? We know it before he utters it, and yet we still find ourselves on Peter's side when it comes to our own practices regarding forgiveness. We laugh and scoff at the silly disciples who just can't get it. And yet, we get it and just can't do it. So I want to investigate this just a little bit. How many times should we forgive people? Is that an unreasonable question to ask? Would you forgive someone who stole from you, or cheated on you, or beat you, or harmed you, or your family, or lied about you? Would you forgive any such person once, twice, 3 times? My guess is that Peter probably thinks he's being a bit on the generous side when he asks Jesus, how many times should we forgive someone? 7 times? I mean, like after the 7th time, you'd think they've had ample opportunity to change, right? And of course, 7 is that perfect number. God created the world in 7 days, 6 days, and then he rested on the 7th, making 7 complete. So if I forgive him 7 times, that should complete my obligation to forgive, right, Jesus? Of course, Jesus' answer still remains to us as it did for Peter. No, Peter, not 7, but 70 times 7. This is not a moment for the Count of Sesame Street to go, 488 times forgiven, 489 times forgiven, 490 times forgiven. This is not a time for us to come in and note the equation equals out to be 490. The point that Jesus is making is that by the time you've reached the limit of forgiveness, you will have lost count as to how many times you have forgiven. Because I guarantee you, if you have forgiven someone 490 times, you will have lost count. Or sanity, one of the two. Maybe both. Imagine you had to answer the question, how many times have you forgiven your children? It's simple, right? How many times have you all had to forgive your children? Except for the children? Have you all had to forgive your brothers and sisters? You only have sisters, so of course you have. How many times have you forgiven your children or your sisters? Can anybody give me a number?
If we lie.
What's that?
If we lie.
If you lie, yeah.
Would too many be in the wrong answer?
Too many would be the appropriate answer because you wouldn't have a number. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many times. I've lost count. Refusing to forgive or putting limitations on forgiveness only sets us up for pain, for suffering, and downward spiral. Forgiveness liberates us. It liberates you from allowing the wrong you've endured to define who you are. Oftentimes we say, I'm not forgiving that person because it seems like the one power you have after they've wronged you, right? Like, I'm just not going to forgive them. Hell could rise and the world could blow up and I am not forgiving that person. And you know what? I've been there. I have been there. But believe it or not, true power is forgiveness. Because if you are holding on to something so much that you are going to let hell rise and the world blow up, that's not what I call heaven, folks. That's not what I call life. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is power. And it takes power, and thankfully not our own power, to forgive. It also takes humility to forgive, which I think is what the latter part of Jesus' message is talking about. It takes humility. Because we realize God is losing count on forgiving us. Can you tell me how many times God has forgiven So begin working toward losing count when it comes to forgiveness. It is a tall order, no doubt. But with humility and with faith in Jesus Christ, all things are what? Possible and forgiven. That is a right answer. All things are forgiven. But all things are possible through Christ, who gives us strength. So keep the faith and forgive, for you have indeed been forgiven. Amen. Gracious God, we know that this is a challenging message for each and every one of us because forgiveness is so hard. And when we are being bombarded by the world and it seems like people are out to get us, it's hard for us to let that go and to forgive. Lord, you are calling us to let that go and forgive. You're not calling us to justify the wrongs that are being done. You're not calling us to go along with the wrongs that are being done. You're not calling us to sit down and let the wrongs be done. You are simply calling us to forgive, despite the wrongs that have been done. Lord, you are a God who continually forgives us, though we don't deserve it, and though we don't cease in our sin. You continually forgive us. Make us a people of forgiveness, so that by forgiveness we may show that there is a God among us. In Jesus'